beneath the ancient streets of Rome, underneath the churches, the squares, the monuments that time has tried to immortalize. There are corridors where light cannot penetrate, stairs that spiral down deeper than history dared to document, tunnels where bones whisper secrets that no man should ever hear. I witnessed what the maps concealed. I saw the doors that the Vatican locked away. I encountered what not even faith could keep confined forever. ... Tonight ... You will descend with me, but remember, not everyone who enters the undergrounds of Rome returns. I witnessed what time, dust, and fear have tried to conceal. Beneath the gilded layers of the eternal city, beyond the tourist paths and churches visited only by the curious, there exist living corridors, labyrinths where the very air bears the weight of ancestral sins. Whispers of forgotten stories echo in the shadows, intertwining the past with the present, shaping a tapestry of mystery that few dare to explore. It was within one of these forsaken labyrinths, hidden amongst the secret subterranean avenues of Rome, that the tragedy of Father Angelo unfolded. Father Angelo was an elderly priest, etched by the passage of time. His face resembled a landscape of wrinkles and shadows, and his eyes were windows to a tormented soul. He had devoted his life to the service of God, yet the trials of existence and relentless doubts had cracked the foundation of his faith. Once, when a young parishioner asked him about the presence of evil in the world, he hesitated before responding. God allows evil to exist so that we can recognize the good, but inside, he questioned whether his faith had the strength to bear the burdens of the mysteries surrounding him. His superiors dispatched him to restore a marginalized church, on the fringes of alleys where not even the sun dared to shine. It was a forsaken place, steeped in stories of despair and abandonment, with walls draped in moss and shattered stained glass, seemingly imbued with the tales of the souls who had passed through and left their marks. There, amidst the silence, broken only by the sound of rain, he stumbled upon something that would forever alter his destiny, the staircase. It was a night when the rain pounded, the roofs like urgent prayers. As he inspected the structure, the wood creaked beneath his feet, echoing the laments of the ancient city. The place seemed to seek his presence, yearning for a human touch. The humidity enveloped Father Angelo like a heavy cloak, and the smell, of mildew surrounded him. Yet he pressed on. The sacred met the profane that night. Then he heard a sound, the crack of wood yielding behind the main altar. Curiosity, perhaps mingled with a desire to prove something to himself, drew him to investigate. What he discovered was a door, an opening veiled by the very architecture, a rupture in the fabric of history, waiting to be uncovered. The air around him seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as if the space itself possessed consciousness. Beyond it, the stairway of perdition awaited. These were not mere steps. They were invitations, invitations carved from black stone and ancient slime, spiraling downward into a belly that even the oldest maps of Rome's underground mysteries dared not chart. The promise of dark revelations and forbidden knowledge hung heavily in the air, almost tangible. The steps felt alive, pulsating beneath his feet, beckoning him to descend deeper. Father Angelo carried with him only an oil lantern, its dim light casting dancing shadows on the walls, and his iron crucifix, a symbol of his faith, now feeling more like a burden. He hesitated for a moment, his heart racing at the thought of what lay ahead. Yet, something within him, a mix of curiosity and necessity, pushed him forward. He began his descent. The initial steps brought only the smell of dampness, and the echo of his own footsteps resonating in a maze of darkness. With each step, the atmosphere thickened, as if the air around him grew denser. 10 steps down, and the air grew heavy as lead, the warmth replaced by a biting cold. 20 steps later, he passed inscriptions of hollow eyes and sewn mouths, contorted figures, engravings unknown even to the scholars of Rome's hidden catacombs. The priest whispered prayers, but each word faded before it could echo, lost in the vastness of that place. Time seemed to slow down, as if the space surrounding him was trapped in an endless moment. He wondered how many souls had descended before him, how many had found what they were seeking, and how many had vanished, consumed by the labyrinth itself. After what felt like an eternity, which could have been mere minutes or centuries, Father Angelo arrived at a chamber. It was a circular room, adorned with columns shaped like inhuman forms that writhed and twisted in the shadows. In the center stood a black stone urn, cracked upon its surface, emanating a palpable energy, almost summoning him. And on the walls were ancient mosaics illustrating horrifying rituals where humans knelt before amorphous creatures, as if Rome, long before it was Rome, had its own ravenous gods. Upon witnessing that scene, fear compelled Father Angelo to hesitate. Yet curiosity, or perhaps something worse, drove him forward. The staircase continued, turning ever narrower, increasingly suffocating. He felt his heart pounding in his temples, on the verge of bursting. The darkness seemed to breathe, a sense of being watched intensified, and Father Angelo could hardly move without feeling the pressure of 1,000 unseen eyes upon him. And then he arrived. In the final chamber, it was vast, silent, and at its center stood a throne made of fused bones. Around it, frozen in eternal acts of supplication, were statues of human agony, not mere sculptures, but real victims, fossilized by pain and despair. In the most hidden corners of Rome's forgotten subterraneans, Father Angelo realized the staircase was not merely a passage. It was a test, an offering, and he had failed. As the realization struck him, the immobile figures began to stir there, bones creaking like rusted doors. It was a macabre sound reverberating through the chamber's walls, amplifying the terror that consumed him. From the shadows emerged something an amorphous, pulsating presence, composed of eyes that never blinked and mouths whispering in languages predating Latin. It was as if the echoes of history, of rituals, and the pains of the past had materialized. Before him, the air thickened further, becoming dense and heavy, as though wrapped in a viscous black fog. The entity offered forbidden knowledge, promising answers to the questions that plagued Father Angelo. It drew closer, and he felt the influence of that presence. He fought against it for a moment, but when the creature spoke his true name, a name he hadn't realized he had forgotten, Father Angelo succumbed. He screamed, he prayed, he begged. Nothing worked. As the grey dawn dragged itself over the empty streets of Rome, some locals reported hearing from the forgotten church a sound that was not of bells, but of something much older, something that was calling. It was a summons echoing through the alleyways, a whisper enveloping the city in a shroud of mystery. At the altar, they found only the crucifix of Father Angelo, but it was no longer cold. It pulsed, emitting a faint light reminiscent of life, or perhaps a shadow of what once was a man of faith. And I, the corvid, saw. I witnessed the stairway of perdition breathe again, hungry for another traveler. Thus, the story intertwines. Each stone of the labyrinth carries the weight of a forgotten fate. Rome, the eternal city, guards its secrets, and those who dare to descend into its depths are not merely explorers, but are woven into an infinite narrative, where light and darkness engage in a perpetual dance of power. The echoes of prayers merge with the cries of the damned, and the city remains a labyrinth of interwoven tales, awaiting new travelers willing to challenge its secret. I witnessed what even the hidden maps dare not reveal. Beneath the deep underbelly of Rome, layers upon layers of forgotten history lie hidden in places where the very earth refuses to let light in. These are spaces that safeguard secrets so ancient and dark that, if uncovered, could crumble the very foundation of human belief. It was into one of these locations, a deep wound buried beneath the eternal city, that an expedition dared to descend, be driven by greed and the thirst for recognition. They unleashed something that should have remained dormant. The discovery this saga began when archaeologist Francesco Valeri, a specialist in ancient structures, stumbled upon a long-lost manuscript in the Vatican archives. The document spoke of an underground cemetery older than the famous Christian catacombs. This site was known only by a name, the Lost Cemetery. According to the text, early Christians, as well as pagans before them, had used this vast network of tunnels to bury their deadened, to conduct forbidden rituals under the shadow of Roman persecution. It was a sacred yet cursed space, a symphony of life and death pulsating beneath the city's surface. Obsessed, Francesca assembled a team and, ignoring all warnings, set out to locate the site. They employed ancient maps, modern tools, and the instincts of seasoned archaeologists to find a long-forgotten entransier, dilapidated old crypt, cloaked by centuries of layered constructions. On the third day of their excavation, they broke through the floor of the crypt. The air that rose from it wasn't just stale. It was ... ancient, burdened with broken promises and unheard prayers. Armed with lanterns and cameras, They descended. The initial meters unveiled simple passageways adorned with primitive Christian symbols crosses, fish, Alpha and Omega. However, the scenery soon shifted. The walls began to reveal distorted figures, hybrids of man and beast, inscriptions in a language predating Latin echoes from a forgotten time that seemed to whisper warnings. The ignored signs Francesca disregarded. Be signs. The team pressed deeper, navigating endless corridors filled with burial niches where mummified bodies appeared to watch them with hollow eyes. In some areas, the tunnels narrowed so much that crawling was required. The absolute silence was only punctuated by their muffled breaths. It was then that they stumbled upon the seal, a circular door, hewn from black stone, was engraved with forbidden symbols, notable and foreboding. These markings seemed to pulse under Francesca's palms. She believed that behind it lay true archaeological treasure, perhaps even the relics of forgotten saints. Without hesitation, she ordered its opening. The seal resisted. For hours, they attempted to break it. An unsettling feeling began to spread among the team members, but Francesca's ambition overshadowed any fears. Then, with a groan that sounded more like a sigh from the very earth, it yielded Dot. A garden of horrors. What they found on the other side was not a treasure. It was a garden of horrors. A gigantic chamber where human remains and preserved bodies were piled like offerings before. A grand central structure. An altar made of bones, darkened by age. On the altar, something still pulsated, a mass of organic matter covered in runes and embedded bones. The presence there was palpable, and the air vibrated as if it were about to shatter. The lanterns flickered, the cameras stopped working, and then the whispers came, sweet and soft. The voice spoke directly into the minds of each team member. It promised knowledge, wealth, immortality, but every promise came with a price. The whispers infiltrated their consciousness, offering the darkest and most irresistible temptations. The madness, some archaeologists began to act strangely, laughing alone, whispering to the walls, ripping by their own clothes in an attempt to free something within. Francesca was struck by the realization that she had unleashed a force that should have remained undisturbed. She tried to order an exit, but it was too late. The ground of the chamber shook and cracked. A swelling vibration of pure malevolence filled the space. From the burial niches, humanoid figures began to emerge, gemmified bodies, yet with eyes glowing with eternal hatred. The pursuit of glory had transformed this place into a well of despair. The Lost Cemetery was no mere necropolis. It was a prison. The expedition devolved into carnage. Francesca fled, driven solely by the instinct to survive, as her colleagues were dragged back into the dark catacombs. The whispers now erupted into deafening screams of tormented souls crying for release. Alone, she was trapped in a nightmarish reality. The escape and the losses, she navigated the labyrinth. Her lantern's light flickered like a candle in a storm, cutting through the darkness only to be swallowed by the void. Francesca felt her heart pounding in her throat, the chill of death creeping closer. The entities that had once been trapped began to stir, the darkness swirling round her like a brewing tempest. At last, she discovered an exeter gap in the stone that showed a distant light. The city's archive seemed to call her name, but as she approached, she heard the lament of her colleagues being dragged into the abyss. Forcing her body through the opening, she pressed on. Some say she managed to escape, but she never uttered another word. She was found sitting on the steps of decrepit, eyes wide open, staring into nothingness. The horror and pain had marked her in ways words could never express. The echoes of shadows even today. Those who walk the silent streets above Rome's hidden underground can hear. On moonless nights, the whispers rising through the cracks and by the earth. Calling. And I, the crow, witnessed. I saw the seal break. I saw the lost cemetery awaken. Now. The eternal city is no longer just a symbol of beauty and history. It has become a place where darkness yearns for new travelers, where curiosity can morph into a curse, and where the voices of the past will never truly be silenced. If you hear the whispers, do not dare to descend. You may uncover secrets that were meant to be forgotten, and immortality may not be as desirable as it seems. For what is buried beneath Rome is not just history, it is a warning. And I, the crow, will always be here, watching, waiting for the next traveler who dares to challenge the darkness. I witnessed water boil without fire. I saw walls breathe as if alive, and I beheld a soul lost to something slumbering in the dark belly of the city. They say that Rome was built upon the ruins of ancient peoples. However, what many do not realize is that beneath every stone, every abandoned church, every bustling square, lie layers of buried historicism, of which should never have been unearthed. Beneath the radiant facade of the eternal city, secrets tremble on the thin line between the sacred and the profane. The Well of Whispers is one of them, nestled within a forgotten little church, hidden away in the alleys between Trastevere and Johnny Collo. The well remained sealed for centuries, locked by rusty chains and archaic Latin priors, portal to horrors that no one dared approach. It was believed that the voices stored there echoed the cries of lost souls, waiting for a moment when human curiosity would awaken them. Curiosity is a sweet poison, and it infected Father Vittorio, a young priest tasked with restoring the old parish, a space where faith and despair intertwined like shadows dancing on the walls. While sifting through dust-laden basements filled with memories, he discovered the well hidden beneath a rotting hatch, an uncovering that promised a fresh start, yet quickly morphed into a nightmare. The discovery of the well at first, it appeared, merely as an ancient narrow hole flanked by weathered stones, topped with chains and symbols etched along its rim symbols, that historians now link to pre-Christian rituals. These markings were remnants of a darker era, a connection to something generations had tried to forget. What set the the Well of Whispers, apart from any other relic of Rome's underground mysteries, were the sounds at night as the hallways turned, cold like the breath of death. Whispers rose from the depths, calls, promises, warnings. Father Vittorio tried to dismiss them, sending up prayers into the wind to fend off the presence that haunted his heart. But the whispers were relentless. They were voices that seemed to know his essence, his name, and more importantly, his hidden desires. Vittorio set us free. With each uttered word, an electric thrill coursed through his body, transforming a mere beckoning into an obsession. The weight of memories from the ancient priests buried there began to send shivers down his spine. He searched through the church records, and what he found only deepened his despair. He uncovered old Accountsilia priests who had lost their sanity, families who vanished without a trace, and a single sealed note at the end of a grim tome. Never listen, never respond. But it was too late. The well had chosen him, and that choice came with a dark burden. The descent into the earth's belly one fateful night. Unable to resist, Vittorio returned to the crypt. Armed with nothing but an oil lamp, he descended down to the hatch and, breaking the seal, peered inside. The darkness was so profound it seemed to swallow the light, engulfing him in an endless abyss. Then he heard it, not just words, but a somber, primal melody that spoke directly to his soul. The music promised redemption, power, and eternal life, weaving invisible strings of desire around his anxious heart, as if entranced and without considering the consequences. The young priest tethered a rope around his waist and began to descend. But the well was not straight. It twisted like an esophagus, slowly engulfing him, as if it could see his soul with every movement. The walls were adorned with ancient inscriptions, drawings that mixed blood, bones, and human sacrifice rituals, presenting a visual crucifixion that bore the pain of lives that had been laid to rest. The song of the abyssivary breath was filled with the scent of damp earth and something foul. As he descended, the whispers amplified in volume and intensity ancient voices, long-dead tongues, each trying to bargain something from him. Your suffering, your faith, your flesh. The deeper he went, the stronger the lure became, the promise, pull of power that the well offered. It was a trap woven from illusions, subtle manipulation of the spirit. Time froze, and he found himself alone in a symphony of desires. When he finally reached the bottom, Vittorio found no water. Instead, he discovered a black, viscous lake, where grotesque and undefined shapes moved just beneath the surface. The lake bubbled, appearing almost alive in a threatening, seductive dance. And from its center, a hand emerged. A hand made of bones, desiccated muscles, and open eyes scattered across the flesh. That hand did not pull him in. It invited him a call from the abyss to join a world he did not fully comprehend. The priest, amid desperate tears and prayers, understood the well of whispers was a mouth, a passage, and what dwelled on the other side was starving. Vittorio tried to ascend. He fought back. He heard the inner voice calling for freedom, but the rope securing him rotted away within seconds, dissolving like sand through his fingers. The climax of destruction, the voices then shifty turning from seductive to cruel mocking him, celebrating his fall. The lake began to pull at him, slowly yet irresistibly, as if the water itself could sense his despair. And in the last moment before being consumed, Vittorio saw Rome itself, not just his physical body, but his spiritual essence was built upon ancient pacts, upon holes like that used to seal indescribable horrors. And now, thanks to him, one of those mouths was open once more, the terror of his choice reflected in every corner of the dim chamber. The echoes of the city became part of the very structure of the Weller feedback loop of interrupted lives ready to resurface. Vittorio merged with the void, a sacrifice to a city that would never forget. When the faithful arrived for Mass the following Sunday, they found the church empty. No trace of Vittorio, except for a single message clawed into the crypt walls. The well has been freed. Today, it is said that in the empty corridors of that abandoned churchyard, mere one among many forgotten in the hidden depths of Rome, you approach too closely to the well. You might hear your own name being called, invited, condemned, and I, the crow, witnessed, I saw the well open its eyes, and they remain open, waiting, the eternal weight of unquiet voices. The city above, so innocent, so oblivious to the horror that pulses beneath its feet, and evil that feeds off human curiosity, always seeking more souls to incorporate, prisoners in a vicious cycle of wonder and ruin, where a single misstep can trigger an avalanche of horrors. Countless lives pass by, unaware that Rome holds in its shadows the true darkness of humanity and what lies beneath, in the depths of the well of whispers. For those who wish to succumb to the irresistible pull of the unknown, the shadows of the crow will always be there, watching, waiting,